Well, good afternoon to all our friends here on the East Coast, and to those a little bit farther west, good morning. My name is Eric Ebersole, and I'm the president of Hiring Our Heroes, and I want to welcome you to today's virtual career community session hosted by Hiring Our Heroes. And let me start by giving a special thanks to the sponsors, our sponsors of today's event, of the 1150 Academy, one of our trusted partners when it comes to training, especially in cyber and IT. I want to talk a little bit as we kick off this first virtual career community session of the year. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, last year. And for many of us, I think last year was something that we probably want to move past and forget as quickly as possible. But, we obviously saw lots of challenges across the employment space. We know veterans experience those challenges. But within those challenges, we also saw a lot of bright spots and a lot of pathways to the future. And really, there are two observations I want to make as we think about veteran employment and how we move forward as an organization and how we continue to serve the people we serve, transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses. The first observation was that COVID really taught us, and the recession really taught us that most service members, many, and veterans especially, are going to need to think about upskilling and reskilling to fit into a modern 21st century workforce. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to start from scratch. In some cases it does, but in many instances, it's really looking at where there's some clear opportunities to acquire the skills that you're going to need to be successful, and then transitioning those skills into meaningful employment. So that's observation number one. As you get into this year, as we see the changes to the economy, just remember a little bit of upskilling and reskilling goes a long way. The second point is that cyber and IT jobs are hot, and it's not just hot now, it's going to continue in the long term. As we look at the 21st century employment landscape, the projected job growth among cyber and IT jobs is over 10%. It's by far one of the best, by far the best growing industry across the country. And there's certainly a lot of great opportunities. And what's great about cyber and IT is how much the companies that are looking for that talent appreciate veteran talent. So it is a real strong match. They like the leadership. They like the skill sets that veterans bring. They like their resiliency. All those things really matter. And for many of you, if you weren't a cyber warrior in the military, it doesn't mean that you can't get the skills pretty quickly to be able to fit into one of these long-term, high-paying jobs. And that's why we're really honored to partner with the 1150 Academy. It is a partnership that's founded on one, or really two basic principles: high quality training and jobs. They're our partners because at the end of the day, they make sure that the people who go through, the veterans who go through their training academy, get jobs. And we're here to help that too. So let me introduce my good friend, Chris Hutchinson, who's the SVP of Engagement for 1150 Academy. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Eric. Appreciate the time, and thanks also to Hiring Our Heroes. We're honored to be working with such an amazing organization. And also thank you to all of you for your service and for your interest in this presentation today. I hope we can share some things about transitioning successfully from a career in the military to civilian life. And to help me with that at the end, as we kind of go through some questions, I'm joined today by Dave Brunner, who is an Army veteran and 1150's Director of Admissions. And then also joined by Josh Gillen, who is an IT consultant and also an Army veteran and is a relatively recent graduate of 1150 Academy's cybersecurity program. So with that today, we are going to talk about 3 steps for a successful transition to a career in technology. And then we will open it up for some questions at the end. Next slide, please. So it's really important as you're kind of going through this phase and considering what your ideal career path looks like, is to not only take pieces that you've learned, but also what do you enjoy, and finding a way to map that into the next phase of your career. And as we talk about careers in tech, there's a couple of key areas that are important for you to consider as you look at your skills and look at kind of where you want to end up. Next slide, please. So as you consider your ideal career path, there's a couple of key buckets or areas that you probably want to consider, especially understanding of where your passions fit and how those align with skills and kind of job buckets in the IT world. So one of the key things, probably the most important thing to remember, is that in today's world, in 2021, there are not just tech businesses. Every business is a tech business now. It's not just the Googles and the Salesforces of the world, but it's banking and healthcare and online retail. Every business is a tech business, and every business needs strong tech talent in order to remain vital and be able to grow in today's economy and company culture. So don't feel like you have to just kind of, well, I don't know if I want to work for a tech company, but if you have a passion for these skills, you could really work in any vertical market because it's everywhere. And you see things in the news recently. The U.S. government, we dealt with a cybersecurity attack. More and more businesses have moved virtually and online in the era of COVID. So with that comes just a ton of more IT-based jobs. And some of those job buckets are around 4 highlights here. So first being web development. You hear that term. Web development is typically jobs that involve coding that kind of look at the work of building and updating websites. So every viable business or company now has a website. Web dev involves the coding and the construction of those websites. Software development is more on the back end. So those are coding jobs involved with the work of building and maintaining software applications. Another bucket for consideration is cybersecurity. Those are non-coding jobs that are focused on protecting data from cyber attacks. And again, that's across all entities and all businesses. And then the last bucket is UX UI design. And again, those are also non-coding jobs that involve design and research to give users a more intuitive or a better experience when they're accessing websites. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit more definition here, and I'm not going to read all these slides to you verbatim, or at least I'm going to try and avoid doing that, but this will be available on the Hiring Our Heroes website as well. So as we go through this, you can always also go back to HOH and find content here as well. So a little bit more about web development and kind of starters, some of the job descriptions or job titles you might hear related to web development are front-end developers, back-end developers, or full stack developers. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But with front-end development, essentially the main focus is on the visual parts of the website. So any text or graphics or buttons or links that you see on a website, that's really what the front-end side is all about. And some of the front-end skills that you're going to be hearing or maybe familiar with is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and really some of those skills include like debugging or looking for code flaws. So when a link gets broken on a website, these folks are able to go in and make those corrections and also improving code. Some of your code that you may build early in your career is going to look a lot different than the code that you build later in your career. You'll get a lot more efficient, especially as you get more comfortable with the language. And then the opposite is the back-end development side. So the back-end development has to do with the parts that are kind of behind the scenes that the user doesn't see. How is the website communicating with servers and databases? And those back-end skills are more likely to deal with things like Ruby on Rails, PHP, Java, Python. And then there's also database management components of back-end development as well. So Oracle and Redis and amongst others like that. So these are really 2 key components. And what we're seeing from employers is that those that can do both front end and back end or kind of have that full stack are even more valued or more sought after in today's job market. So if you have the ability to do both, it's going to make you that much more attractive to area employers. Next slide, please. So we'll move into a little bit talking about software development. And again, I'll kick it off with just some job titles that you might hear or be familiar with. So software development job titles include programmer, software developer, software architect, front-end developer. You'll see those positions posted everywhere on Indeed, LinkedIn, et cetera. And whether you work on applications or whether you work on applications, users interact with the back-end processes that drive the user software. And so that's what the software development languages, that's their role. And so some of those that you're going to hear or would learn about include Java, JavaScript, SQL, Python, Microsoft C Sharp, Oracle. And so just like the web development, some of these software development focuses on user-facing applications while others work on like the background system software. So again, a wide variety of jobs in this area, rapidly growing, and continually see growth in this area as well. Next slide, please. So moving into cybersecurity, there's obviously been a lot of talk about cybersecurity in the last several weeks. The United States government suffered its largest cyber attack in its history. And so there is definitely a need for cybersecurity positions. And a lot of folks think of cybersecurity as it relates to data protection or protecting, content from bank content or healthcare content, and all of that is relevant. But we're also starting to see there's a lot of businesses, particularly in the manufacturing area, that use programmable logic controls, and a lot of that equipment is susceptible. And so, really, cybersecurity is not just for big, massively branded companies that are trying to protect their payroll and all of their industry secrets. But you're seeing you're seeing hackers and cyber terrorists do more and find different avenues to attack for any variety of reasons. So prior to 2020, we saw really significant gaps in terms of number of people that were trained in cybersecurity and the number of folks that were available to fill those positions. And in light of so many more people moving to e-business and converting how they conduct business to a lot more digital, that need is even greater. So there are a number of cybersecurity certificates that are in high demand. You can read them, but CompTIA Net Plus and CompTIA Sec Plus are two of the top. And then there's several others as well. And this is an area that you want to continually be updating your skill set on. You want to stay on top of what's happening constantly because it is ever evolving. And you really want to look at knowing not only just how to defend, but also what attack scenarios look like as well, to really position yourself strongly to be a force in this field. So again, some job titles in this area are security analyst, security engineer, security architect, IT consultant. Those are a number of positions that you may see in this particular area. Next slide, please. So wrapping these buckets up, we'll talk a little bit about UX UI design. And this is really, it's a great skill to have. We kind of view it as a really nice add-on to some of these other skills, or folks that maybe have already had some tech experience or have maybe even worked in cybersecurity. UX UI design is a really nice skill up to add to your current resume or repertoire. So some of the things that you might be interested in kind of getting to know more about on the UX UI side is color theory. How do designers use color to send different messages? Design, web design. And again, you'll see job titles everywhere from UX UI designer, UX researcher, UI designer. And this is kind of, it's a really cool area. And it's one that our employer partners love seeing our graduates and our current students work on. So it's not uncommon for our employer partners to actually work with our UX UI classes and give them a real world website and say, okay, do your analyses on these. Come back to us and tell us what you're seeing. And we've had great success with that. We've had a couple of our employer partners that have spent a lot of money to make corrections to their website based on the feedback that they were seeing and getting from from our students. So really, really cool area. Again, more of a add-on skill up. As I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a pure standalone, but it is a really nice add-on to other tech skills. Next slide, please. Okay, so we kind of covered the skills that are out there. Now, how do you go about getting these skills? What's the best path for you? What's going to be the quickest and most efficient way for you to find employment? Next slide, please. So once you've kind of figured out what path you want to go down or what you want to learn more about, there's really three main ways to go about capturing these skills. The first is college, the traditional college route, and earning a 4-year degree. The second is online courses where it's a little bit more self-paced, self-educating, using ready-made kind of pre-existing modules. And those can be found in coding, cybersecurity, or design. And then the third way is tech boot camps. And that's really enrolling in an intensive boot camp where you're going to skill up much more quickly, be in a much more immersive environment, fully consuming, and you'll finish most likely in probably closer to 90 days. As opposed to some of these other avenues that may take a little bit longer. But it is important to identify which opportunity is right for you. So boot camps may not be the right fit for everybody in the same way that a 4-year degree isn't the right fit for everybody. So you really have to kind of figure out what works best for you, what environment is going to motivate you to continue to put in the work, and what other outside factors are impacting how quickly you need to complete your training. So encourage you to review all and make sure that you're making the decision that's best for you, whether it's a tech boot camp or online courses or college. Ultimately, you have to be the one that goes through this, and your success is going to be tied to how comfortable you are, completing the programs. Next slide, please. So I'll go through these three options and give you some pros and cons on both for your consideration. The traditional college option, one of the bigger benefits is that you get more general education as part of that program as well. So you're going to get taught in a variety of subjects, not necessarily just the subjects that you're most interested in. Also, you get the full college experience. So, I went to a 4-year institution. I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it, but it's a way to, interact with other folks, like-minded people. But you obviously are then there for a number of years, which is potentially one of the cons in terms of how quickly you're able to finish your degree. College is another pro is that you can use the GI Bill to cover a portion of your costs, plus other financial aid opportunities as well. Another college con, particularly in today's environment, is just the overall expense of college. The price of 4-year institutions is not going down. It's continually and steadily going up. And so even with financial aid, sometimes that can create some debt, which is not necessarily an ideal way to start your career. Also, career services can be somewhat hit or miss at a 4-year institution, namely just because of the volume of people that they're dealing with. And it's not set up quite the same as other more hands-on like boot camp learning styles. The other con is if you're really focused on quick acquisition of skills and career readiness, there's a lot of extra components that kind of go along with the college experience. So just make sure that you're really taking a deep dive and understanding all that's involved if you do make the decision to pursue a college 4-year degree. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about online courses. There are some benefits to online. It's definitely a lot more affordable, incredibly more affordable than a traditional 4-year degree. It's also much more flexible. So if you are in a situation where you already are employed currently and have an opportunity to make a decent wage, but want to kind of find a way into tech, but aren't quite ready to be able to give up your current job, this might be a good opportunity for you. You can really go at your own pace and go at your own schedule. It does focus solely on the skills that you need for your job in tech. And then there's also many competitive options to choose from. So if this is your best route, make sure that you really dig in and find one that is agreeable to you, because there are quite a few options out there that vary in level of engagement with the folks that sign up. Some of the cons with the online only courses is that there isn't a classroom experience. So you're not really necessarily working with any other students or in a cohort. Also in the online self-directed pace, the certificates that you earn, the certifications that you earn, they may carry a little bit less weight than those of obviously a 4-year college degree or those that are boot camp completion certifications. And then there's also no career services support as part of a reward for going through the program. So you don't really have access to experts that are out there looking to try and find the best position for you. Next slide, please. So lastly, tech boot camps, which 1150 is one of, surprisingly. So with boot camp programs, students benefit from a much more immersive environment. You are locked arms with a cohort. You are going through all the trials and tribulations together and really getting an experience of what it's like to work in a tech environment. There's a lot of problem solving, both individual and team, and everyone is kind of working through problems collectively. So typically we see that tech boot camps are 16 times faster than a 4-year college degree program. There's also a fraction of the cost compared to a traditional 4-year degree program. And the GI Bill is accepted to cover 100% of tuition through most boot camps, our programs included. And then there are part-time and full-time options available. And again, it's very much a hands-on flexible curriculum that's current with industry standards. And what's really cool about our boot camps is that we work arm in arm with our employer partners. So there may be some dramatic changes in the industry right in the middle of one of our 12 or 14-week programs. Well, we're going to reflect that in our curriculum, and we're going to insert that into the day-to-day instruction so that that you can be aware of what's most current in the field. So in other scenarios, you may not have that access to that speed of which to be updated on that type of information. Some of the cons to consider with the tech boot camp is that the education is 100% focused on skills. So there's no liberal arts side or additional classwork. If that's something that you are wanting, a boot camp is not recommended for you. It's also a highly intensive program that requires your full commitment. So our 12-week full-time programs are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And that's before you've even done any of your evening work or work with any of your team members. So it is a full commitment, but you're also going to get through the program much faster than what you see in other methods. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about building your network, and then we will get to some Q&A. Just by going through the program, your job's not done. You really need to put in the work for outreach and connecting within this industry to know what's going on and stay connected with potential hiring managers and decision makers. So next slide, please. Again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but making sure that you have an updated LinkedIn profile is really important. And part of what 1150 does overall in terms of working with the students is we meet with you after week 3. Our career services team meets with you after the 3rd week. We try not to bug you in the first 3 weeks because you're drinking from a pretty aggressive fire hose, and we don't want to distract you from getting that base knowledge of what's needed in our program. But we put the work in at week 3 with folks that are coming through our programs. And we do that for a number of reasons. We work so closely with a number of employer partners that early on, we want to identify potential hires for those employer partners based on, we know what type of personalities they like to hire, who's going to be a fit, who's not, get students in front of those employer partners for mock interviews. And a lot of that is tied to what your profile looks on LinkedIn. Almost, I would say, probably nearly 100% of all employers that we work with are looking at profiles on LinkedIn before they would even consider bringing folks in for an interview. You'll also want to join local tech organizations. I found this to be really important when I was running my own business development firm for tech companies. You don't know what's going on if you're not meeting with local tech organizations. And when folks and decision makers at local tech organizations see you engaged and being a presence in that community, they're a lot more likely to want to engage with you and let you know when there's a possible job opportunity or other things related to projects that they're working on. So it's just a great way to stay in front of folks. Also connect with business groups, kind of similar to local tech organizations. And then also, most importantly, make sure that you stay connected with Hiring Our Heroes. They're an amazing organization, and they're there to provide support, just in the same way that any of the boot camps or 1150 are as well. But Hiring Our Heroes should be, you should be checking in with them at least weekly and letting them know of progress. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of 1150. We are a nonprofit, 501c3, and we're focused on high quality immersive software, web development, cybersecurity bootcamp courses. And really it's about trying to accelerate folks into a skill set that is going to be a lifelong skill and is going to be in high demand. Our goal is to impact 1 million lives in the next 10 years. And for those 1 million people, we want them to earn $1 million in their first 10 years in tech. We do that through deep partnerships like the one we have with Hiring Our Heroes and with our numerous employer partners. We are completely outcomes based in terms of how we approach everything that we do, meaning that our commitment and passion is to identify folks that we can help them get graduated and help get them employed. Next slide, please. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Two more slides. So our programs typically are 12 to 14 weeks full-time or 24 weeks part-time. We're operating at about a 70% job placement rate, and that does include our placements through this past year and dealing with COVID. We have an exceptional graduation rate of about 75 to 85%. And in some instances, that's been as high as 100% in some of our cybersecurity classes. As you heard me mention earlier, we are very immersive and very much a boot camp style. So we are 16 times faster than a traditional 4-year program that you would see at a traditional college or university. And really what that means to you is that not only is it potential tremendous savings on GI Bill dollars, but there's also opportunity costs involved there as well. And by being able to get into the field of choice in 90 days, as opposed to 4 years, you're really saving or gaining an opportunity to earn about $250,000 by being in the field that much earlier. So the immersive learning and accelerated full stack programs are things that we really work with veterans and other folks on that are interested in our programs on. And then obviously you heard me talk a lot about career placement assistance. We have a career services team that is fully dedicated to successfully finding matches for our graduates. And it's not uncommon for our graduates to go to a location, work there for a couple years. Maybe they are looking for a new opportunity. They'll come back to us and we'll gladly help and find placement for them again because of the relationships we're able to maintain. I joined 1150 a little over a year ago, and last check we had placed graduates in over 150 employers across Indiana, and are now rapidly growing that to employers outside of the Indiana state of Indiana as well. I mentioned earlier that we do accept the GI Bill for all military branches, and it will cover your full tuition. We're also in the final stages of gaining vet tech approval. And in addition to that, we have a number of other funding mechanisms that we utilize as well to make the experiences as affordable as possible for anybody that's interested in pursuing a career in tech. Next slide, please. So with that, I will kind of put a bow on things, but if you're immediately interested in speaking to an admissions advisor, you can visit the site that's posted there that ends in 1150 meeting. Or if you want to attend any of our regular weekly and monthly free intro courses, you can sign up for that as well. And you can access that link for the one that ends in 1150 free intro. So with that, I would like to stop talking, which I'm sure you're all excited about, and open the floor up to questions. And just as a reminder, Dave Brunner, who is our Director of Admissions, is available to answer, as well as Josh Gillen, who is a recent cybersecurity graduate. So Eric, I'll kick it to you and see if there's any questions we can answer for the audience.
Yep, great. And again, as Chris mentioned, we're now open for Q&A. If you have a question, I know we have a couple, and we're going to start working through those now. But if you do have a question, and this should be as interactive as possible, please type those in your Q&A session and in the Q&A tab at the bottom, usually at the bottom of the screen, and we will work through those questions. So Chris and 1150 team, here's the first question, and I think this is really at the top of a lot of people's minds, and that's from Jonathan Fisher. And he asked, how hard is it to move into a cybersecurity field with little or no experience, but with certifications such as Security Plus and Network Plus?
You know what, Josh, I'm going to have you kind of field that one a little bit. I'd love for you to talk about your experience and the fact that you're currently working. So if you could maybe provide some scope on that, I think that'd be helpful.
The transition in really, quite honestly, wasn't that hard. The academy gives you a very good baseline. The instructors are without a doubt top notch. Be prepared to put the work in. I came in personally with zero tech background. I landed, in my opinion, a dream job. I get to do everything from managed IT, the standard break fix stuff. Some days I work the cybersecurity side of the house. So I mean, it's doable without a doubt.
Thanks, Josh. Dave, anything that you want to add?
With cyber in general, cyber is a we often say at the academy here that coders are born and cyber people are made. Cyber is a very scholastic program. So if you're used to being a student, if you're used to cracking open books and looking at flashcards and studying material and passing tests, or at least can do that, maybe you don't enjoy it. Some people don't enjoy being students, but as long as you can do that, you can become credentialed in the cyber world. And the beautiful thing about cybersecurity is it's a credentialed business. And so once you have those credentials on your civilian resume, it becomes easily transferable into work. It may be entry-level work at first if you don't have any in-field experience, but yes, it's very easy to get your foot in the door if, as Josh said, you're willing to put in the work in the classroom and get those highly sought after and respected industry certifications on your civilian resume. And I mentioned coding, so just to kind of dovetail on that, coding on the other hand is a little bit more esoteric in the sense that you're going to be doing a lot more than studying, because coding is a lot more about what you can build, what you can paint, and how well, for example. To give everyone an example of what the training would be like and how it's different, expect to spend a lot of time in cybersecurity studying. Again, because you need those industry sought after certifications to validate your knowledge. It would be like a police officer's badge, okay? With coding, you're in class, in training, you're gonna be spending a lot of time doing, because it's not so much what authorization you have in the field, it's what you can show you've created. Here are my paintings, for example. And so that best explains both types of training that you'd be looking at here. But to answer the question specifically, cybersecurity is very, very good at transitioning into, particularly if you're willing to put in the scholastic work and break entry level into a new career. Absolutely. Your MOS, you don't even have to have been a radio operator or a 25 Charlie or anything like that. You can transfer in very, very well.
Thanks, Dave. Eric, there's a couple questions that I see that popped up that I'll answer
Sure.
here quickly.
Hey, Chris, before we do that, I do want to just, follow up on Dave and Josh's point quickly about, because I think part of this is about the growth and what we see companies really love about veterans, which is oftentimes if you can get the entry level experience, get the certification of the credential, that may start out as an entry level job, but what companies quickly find is that your ability to be resilient and to manage teams really helps you grow in that organization. And it's that combination of that military experience and training, and then the credential that really helps a lot of our veterans really accelerate their long-term career opportunities because they have those two skill sets together. And once you get your foot in the door and you can show that you're calm under pressure, you can take good guidance, but work well in teams, I mean, and communicate with people and get the job done. Those things, those are, things that you really don't have with a lot of folks who sometimes don't have that military experience.
That's a great point, Eric. A couple questions. One was related to where folks may be in their InfoSec career path and making sure that they get started in the right spot. So to answer that, 1150's programs are badge based. So yes, we would, Dave and his team would sit down with you and get an understanding of what your background is. And it would, depending on your skill set and admissions, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily, you would maybe have already passed certain badges. So depending on where you are, there could be opportunities for, instead of it being, a 12-week program, maybe you only need to finalize the last 4 or 8 weeks. Maybe you've already done enough to kind of earn your first badge. So those are all one-off conversations. It just kind of depends on what you've already completed. And again, more than happy to have those conversations. Someone also asked about the course delivery. So right now we're still 100% online. We will continue to have 100% line as an option moving forward, but we are looking at reopening our physical locations. Right now, we have physical locations in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Fishers, Indiana, as well as opening in Fort Wayne, Evansville, and Gary. But we are also expanding to a number of other states here in the next 6 to 12 months as well. And kind of how we've discussed things with Eric and Hiring Our Heroes is we can go anywhere where there's demand. So if we needed to have a classroom or run some programs in the DC area or really anywhere else across the country, we could do that in short order because the curriculum and the learning team is set up to be able to do that. So I wanted to kind of address those questions that were outstanding. There was another one that asked about what makes our boot camp better than others. That's always a loaded question, but I do think that our immersive nature and the connections that we have with employer partners definitely separates us. I also think the way that we approach how students pay for their tuition, whether it's GI Bill dollars or other funding buckets that we have, makes us much different as well. We've developed a concept called the Progressive Income Share Agreement that is really open to anybody, that allows for students to borrow money to cover the cost of their tuition or part of their tuition and pay that back interest-free into a fund that can then be paid it forward to future students. So you may hear the term income share agreements out and about, and a number of institutions utilize them, where they're taking a fixed percentage of your future income. One of the biggest challenges with that is that in tech, it's not uncommon for your salary to increase quite dramatically year over year. But if you're locked into an income share agreement, that percentage isn't changing. And so collectively, our founder and leadership team didn't really think that was a great model. And so we came up with this progressive income share agreement. And that's just kind of one example of our approach. We want everybody to have skin in the game. We've learned that students that are just handed a 100% scholarship may not be as motivated in certain situations, but we know that veterans are going to be motivated just because of the nature of their background. And we also know that other folks need kind of that buy-in in order to help kind of get them over the hump in what is very difficult and challenging programs. So again, there's not a one answer to that, but those are a couple of examples of how our approach, I think, is a little bit more student-centered than other programs.
Yeah, Chris, let me field Dion's question a little bit farther, because I think it's really important to kind of look at the landscape. I'm a retired Navy JAG officer, and I know that, most veterans have had, one group or another try to get their GI Bill and try to, to, give them something that they don't really need. Hiring Our Heroes is a nonprofit. It's, a leading nonprofit in this space, is really focused on the outcomes, which are employment. And the reason we have a partnership with 1150 is that at the end of the day, you're not taking the training for the sake of taking the training. You're taking it so that you can get a better employment opportunity, and really find that meaningful career. And so, from our perspective, 1150 is focused on that employment piece. Obviously, good training, which helps then secure the employers, but they're focused on not just giving you that credential. Lots of people could probably do that. They want to make sure you have a job to go with that credential. And if you're not asking those questions, Dion, I think it's a fantastic question, because that's what you need to be thinking about is, look, what's the graduation rate look like? What's the job prospect look like? And then what does the long-term outcomes look like? And those are the things you should be thinking about. And 1150, in our view, is really one of the best in the space, if not the best.
Well, thanks for that, Eric. There was another really good question in here about the difference between going through the program online and on ground. And admittedly, we had to make a quick transition in early 2020 and moved our entire program, existing and future cohorts, from on ground to online in about a 72-hour window. We do a lot of surveying and analytics across all of our classes, and really survey our students. And we were really surprised to see that there was an actual improvement in terms of student experience when we moved from in-person only to online. And I think part of that is just our commitment to leveraging technology. So we do use Zoom for our classes, but beyond that, we've hired additional learning instructors that kind of float around and literally can live look in on students and where they are and what they're doing work-wise. So that if a student is reluctant to, quote unquote, virtually raise their hand and ask a question, we actually have teaching assistants and learning assistants that are like looking over their shoulder and say, hey, let me pull you into this breakout room. Let's work through this. It looks like you're struggling with this concept. And that has been really, really well received. And it's probably a good vision of what work in the future may be like as well, because I think we're seeing a lot of businesses now allowing for remote work. You're not necessarily always going to be, in a cube moving forward. So I think the style that we're using fits well with what we're seeing in the industry. Let's see, I'm trying to keep up on all these questions as well.
Hey, Chris, I have a question here. What
please.
is, and this may be good for Josh as you look through the questions, what does an entry-level cybersecurity job look like?
You're still learning. I mean, I hate to give that answer, but it's as prepared as I was when I left the academy. I didn't know what I didn't know when I walked in the door here. Be a sponge, I mean, you're gonna, and this is gonna kind of play off of another question that I saw asked. Somebody asked if you need to learn how to program a computer or code. I will say in cybersecurity, learn a language. Pick a language and learn it. Python comes in real handy. I use Python on a daily basis, and I'm still learning it kind of on the fly as I go. But you're going to learn to read logs. You're going to start with the basic building blocks of stuff. So.
And what does that team look like, Josh? I mean, so just kind of walk everybody through just, that first day for you, and obviously needed to be a sponge, but what does the structure look like to really help you succeed as an individual and as a team?
So I work at a real small consulting firm. There's a total of 6 of us here. We've got one guy that does sales. He's new. We've got the owner. We've got the director of IT. We've got me. I handle the security side. So I do a lot of partnering with the owner. He has about 25 years in the industry between coding, programming, working for Microsoft, Avanade, other companies like that. So he's got a real good, solid background. Couldn't ask for a better mentor. And he really, nothing that I started out doing was automated. It was all I learned from scratch. It's all from the command line for me. So no user interface, no graphical user interface per se.
Hey, Eric, Dion asked another good question about how one determines what's the best career route to take when unsure, but they want to pursue a career in tech. Honestly, it would be to talk to one of our admissions coaches, and they can kind of give you an idea of how our programs match up with what your skills or passions are. We also offer a number of free intro classes that kind of give you an idea of what it's like to be in an 1150 class. So every program that you heard us talk about earlier, there's a free intro class for. And so I would recommend, honestly, when you're doing your due diligence, to reach out to Dave and his team, and they will walk you through what the program looks like, but more importantly, getting an understanding of what your interests and passions are, and see if, what we offer is a fit for that. Because ultimately, being completely transparent, as a nonprofit, we really rely heavily on our outcomes. You heard me talk about that earlier. We are not a 100% admission institution. There is an admissions process that we have to go through. And the biggest test and the biggest indicator of your success in our program is your ability to complete our pre-work, which is about 40 hours of work that you have to do before the first day of class. We understand that life happens. And so our admissions team and coaches, if we see that someone hasn't progressed through their pre-work and we're pretty close to that start date, we'll reach back out to them and see if there's anything that we can help them with, or if we maybe need to look at, extending when they start. It doesn't do us any good to force someone into a class that they're not able to fully commit to, because ultimately you're going to probably struggle to graduate. And if you struggle to graduate, then we can't find you employment. So we are not going to force anybody into anything or any path. We want to make sure that it's the best fit for you. We're biased, but we do think that our outcomes do speak for themselves. And if it's a right fit, we will give you every opportunity to be successful, both in the class and beyond the class with our career services teams as well. Eric, I know we may be coming on time. I don't know if you saw any other questions that you wanted to make sure that we got to.
Yeah, I think we got a couple more minutes, probably good, maybe 5.
Okay.
I saw one here about for industry comparison, how do your credentials stack up for those in InfoSec and others?
Yeah, Dave or Josh, do you maybe want to talk a little bit about our credentials, the C+, the Sec Plus and Net Plus a little bit, Dave?
Yeah, going back to that. Now, this is again a focus on cybersecurity, which perhaps could be a really good place for a lot of transitioning vets, again, because it's credentialed and you're dealing with the machine, at least in most parts. Now, Josh may disagree with that and say, well, I deal with clients all the time, and that's in fact probably the biggest challenge for some people in cybersecurity. But your CompTIA is essentially the gold standard for cybersecurity. They are an international and a vendor neutral certifying body. And so that's incredibly important when you pass those tests. And this also may go back to the quote unquote entry level work that we were talking about. One of the misnomers we see in the cybersecurity arena specifically, and for example, I'm 7 times IT certified. We offer 2 at our academy. We offer the big ones though. We offer, as Chris mentioned, Network Plus and Security Plus. And with CompTIA being the international vendor neutral certifying body, that means those certifications are pretty much recognizable and valid anywhere you go with pretty much any product that you work on. But one of the mistakes we see within cybersecurity is you have these guys and gals perhaps that come off of active duty. And let's face it, a lot of times your resume coming off of active duty, it's beautiful, right? You've gotten wonderful hands-on training for many hours on end, sometimes halfway across the world from people who have even had more training. but oftentimes that resume isn't necessarily easily translatable to someone who's not been in the military. And that's what we as vets experience all the time. I did 22, 23 years ago. Josh, I'm sure you did. I'm sure anybody on the call has maybe experienced that. That's the hurdle that we try to overcome, and we compel our potential trainees to look at when you consider where to get your training. You know, you got to find the training locations that's going to fit you as an individual. You want to find the training location that's going to get you the credentials in the case of this question that are going to get you recognized easily with the civilian resume in the civilian world. Forget funding, right? You want a job. You want to be able to transition into whatever vocation it is. But CompTIA and Security Plus are incredibly important because they're mid-range to advanced level certifications that again are recognized pretty much anywhere, whatever you do. But real quick, back to the kind of misinformation that happens with cybersecurity. You got a lot of people that come through this and get Sec Plus certified, Security Plus certified. Sometimes they even get certified ethical hacker certification. And they expect, well, I'm ready now. I'm certified. I'm ready to work in a security role at a security operations center command, or as a manager, or as a hacker, even a white hat or gray hat. Let's say everything's gray, right, Josh? A hacker. That's typically not what happens. In order, it's like anything else. It's like going in as an E3 or an E4. You're going to work your way up. Okay. The way to do that is to get in, and as Josh mentioned, meet that mentor or that supervisor or that hiring manager that's going to take you under their wing and train you in field. So most of our cybersecurity people entry level begin, even with the CompTIA certifications that are recognized across the world, they begin on the network level, at the network level. How am I connecting this device? Is it secure? Is it fast? Is it handling the traffic the way that I need to handle the traffic? And that's critically important. So just to set expectations where they need to be. And Josh, you may have agreement or at least something to add.
Dave, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, making that transition from the military to the civilian sector in IT, don't be afraid to take that entry level job. You know, it is after 21 years, as much as I wanted to come in and be a manager or whatever, I was more than happy to come in entry level and learn my way, you know, over the last year. You know, I mean, I look at my professional growth over the last year and I'm pretty amazed. I just had a conversation with the owner the other day, and he's blown away by the amount of drive, tenacity, and as much as I've caught on over the last year. So yeah, don't be afraid, you know.
Thanks, guys. Maybe time for one more quick question, Eric. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Yeah, and I know we have some of these questions. Chris, have you been working with the Army's or the military, like the Air Force's credentialing programs? Are you set up to take their funding yet? If not, we'll get an answer on that.
I don't. Dave, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, we can currently, and there was a question in there about AFCOOL. You for that question, as far as the credentialing assistance providers, you would need to go through the Army or the Air Force in this case to get and find out about funding there. But 1150 as a training institute, we're set up currently to receive Chapter 30. If you're older, if you're more experienced, Chapter 31, okay, and Chapter 33. So Montgomery GI Bill, VOC Rehab, and then post 9/11. Some of the other funding options that are available, you'd want to go through like AFCOOL, for example, okay, as of now.
Great. And I think at the end of the day, as hopefully everybody's been able to, I'm certainly for me, but everybody else, I mean, Dave was an encyclopedia of knowledge on this one. So talking to him and his team is a great starting point. Yeah, you know, I know there's questions about how much of your GI Bill, what's the process look like if I need some accommodation because of the disability. here at the end of the day, it doesn't cost you anything to talk. And if there's one thing that I would encourage everyone to do is reach out to Dave and his team, talk to the admissions, advisor, attend one of those webinars, figure out if this is something you're going to like. And the one thing I'll tell you about, our program and 1150, we're not going to try to put a square peg in a round hole. We're nonprofits, and we're really trying to serve you in a way that's going to help you get to where you want to go in life. So I do see we're at time. I think we've got most of the questions. If you didn't get a question answered, again, please reach out to Hiring Our Heroes, talk to one of our career counselors. They'll give you any of the information, but at the end of the day, again, talk to the admissions advisors at 1150, attend one of the courses. Look, this is no different. If I walked away with anything, this isn't a lot, that different from what you did every day in the military. You have to define your mission. You have to go out and do your research and your workups. You have to get ready. You have to be in the right mental headspace to make it happen. And then you have to get out there and execute your mission. And you're going to maybe have to make some adjustments along the way. But, the team at 1150, Hiring Our Heroes, they're here to help you succeed. And at the end of the day, that's what was great about the military is you didn't leave anybody behind. And that's what I feel about with our team as well and the 1150 Academy team. So with that, I want to thank Chris and Dave and Josh for joining us today. Tremendously helpful. I learned a lot and really honored to partner with such a great organization. I hope everybody who attended today was also able to learn a lot about this very exciting, rapidly growing, rapidly changing opportunity for veterans. And again, please reach out with your questions. We're here to help, and we'll make sure they get into the right place. So with that, thank you all for being here. We'll catch up soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.